I'm Michael Govin, the director of the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, and it's a pleasure to welcome you here at the Milken Institute Conference to talk about art for a change. And we have fantastic guests here that we're going to hear from in a minute. And I'd like to just say, while you're here, if you're here from far away, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art isn't far away on Wilshire Boulevard. And just to say something about art.
Mocha is not too far.
And Mocha is a little further. We'll talk about that, just down the road.
I just want to make sure his microphone was working.
And I wanted to say something about art and money that sometimes people think of them as separate or it's about investment. But we've been on a growth curve. We've actually doubled the size of the museum recently, and that results in huge economic impact, as well as the social and educational impact that we think is our first impact. There's been over $500 million in economic impact from that growth over just a few years, 700 new jobs in the last 5 years that we've generated, and taken annual economic direct activity from 44 million to 117 million in LA County. So just to say, art is a business of trading assets, but it also is, like other business, a huge benefit to our economy. So to introduce our fantastic panel, I want to start to my left with Linda Resnick, who I know well. She serves as a trustee and a vice chair and chair of our acquisitions committee at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. She's been doing that since 1992. She co-organized our collectors committee, which annually raises, and this just last weekend, $4 million a year to buy art. She and her husband, Stuart, are founders of Roll Global, and I think you know their brands, commercial. Fiji Water, Palm Wonderful, Paramount Farms, Pistachios and Almonds, Teleflora, Justin Vineyards, Winery and Landmark Vineyards. She's also on the executive board of the Aspen Institute, for which she chairs the communications committee, the executive board for UCLA Medical Services, CapCure, the Milken Family Foundation, and she's a trustee of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, where she serves on the Committee for European Painting and Sculpture. I don't even know how you have time to be here,
I'm
Linda.
exhausted just hearing all this. I have to go to sleep now. I need a nap.
Larry Gagosian, who many of you may know, is owner of Gagosian Gallery, Inc., the largest art gallery exhibitor really in the world. He has 14 galleries internationally, including New York, Los Angeles, London, Rome. He represents A-list artists. You probably know a few of them, whether they're Jeff Koons, Damien Hirst, John Kern, and Richard Serra. But he's also on the board of directors of Jazz at Lincoln Center, board of the trustees of the Institute of Fine Arts, New York University. He's a French Legion of Honor winner, and he's a benefactor. Although he focuses on his art business, I know that he's very supportive of museums. For example, he helped commission Cy Twombly to create a beautiful installation in the Louvre in Paris, and works from his private collection, and he is a collector indeed himself. We're at the Musée Picasso's exhibition in Abu Dhabi in 2010. So it's nice to have you as well here, Larry.
Thank you, Michael.
And Maurice Marciano, who is chairman of Guess, Inc., the Los Angeles-based apparel company, which he co-founded with his brothers, Armand, George, and Paul, in 1981. You've been very busy in art, Maurice. I think last year, the Maurice and Paul Marciano Art Foundation acquired the former Masonic Temple on Wilshire Boulevard, which they've been working on as a museum, a new museum for Los Angeles on Wilshire Boulevard, just between Mocha and LACMA.
Yes, make the connection.
And he has served since just recently as the co-chair of the Board of Trustees, the Museum of Contemporary Art, Los Angeles. And he is also involved in other charities, including the $10 million gift to the Los Angeles Children's Hospital, which was very recent. So it's a pleasure to have you all here. And I know all of you out there want to talk about art, the art market, and collecting. I was asked to talk a little bit to start with just a little bit about the art market presently, if I could have slide number 1. There was a report just recently published about the long view of art and art investing. Over 112 years, collectibles have appreciated at an annual average rate of about 2.4 to 2.8% in real returns, and that is better, as you can see, than government bonds, gold, T-bills. But unlike gold, of course, there are only a limited supply of Rembrandts. And thinking about art, the report talked about the value, the enjoyment value of art, that you don't have to put it in a safe deposit box, although you can. You can live with it, which is something we'll talk about. Next slide, 2. The art market set a new high, almost set a new high, $65.4 billion in 2013. That's an 8% increase worldwide, 25% in China alone, 2% growth in China in the last year. A lot of it due to higher priced works of art, which is key, and something we'll talk about. Post-war and contemporary art accounted for 46% of the market by value and 44% by volume change. And just to take a look at the global picture, slide number 3, there's been an increase in auction sales of over 150% in the last decade, much of that driven, again, by higher prices. And in 2013, the U.S. did have the largest share of volume with 21%, China 18%. And it is an international, really an international art world, which I want to talk about. So to ask a few questions of our experts, I thought I might start with you, Linda, and if you want to put up slide 17, because we asked our collectors here, some of our collectors, to show some pictures of works of art. This is Hans Memling, who I like to call, this is Jesus Christ Superstar, this picture. I love this picture of yours, Linda. You have collected... You collect in all areas. You collect contemporary at your corporation, modern, but the core of your collection at home is old masters.
Correct.
Old masters are a very rarefied special field that you do need expertise to collect within, which is very distinctive in your collection. In addition, I personally have never known you to sell anything. You seem to collect for museums, the museums you've been interested in. I wonder if you could talk about how you make those precious decisions to acquire an important work of art.
Yes, Stuart tries to remind me that the auction catalogs are not mail order catalogs, so sometimes we don't put enough work into it. You look at this Hans Memling, what's a nice Jewish girl from Beverly Hills doing with Jesus Christ on her wall in her bedroom, no less. I also have a Madonna there, and I think one other religious
Next
picture.
slide, 19.
No, this is Francois
18,
Boucher. But just to show you the scope of our collecting, so this is a 15th century master. It's very tiny and precious, like a piece of jewelry. And then the Boucher, which is the next slide.
Next slide.
Is 18th century, laid in the Swan, a lost picture that was discovered, kind of exciting. Then we have, what do we have next? We have the Ang, yes, the Madonna, which hangs right in front of our bed. I mean, it's intimidating for Stuart, but that works for me. So, and then in the other room, we have a Picasso drawing. And which of course is early 20th century, and then we have the Hockney, which is next. I mean, this is just, you know, we have a lot of pictures, but these are just some of the areas. And then the Tomaselli, which is next, which is very current, and a little picture of the house with a Mayol in the garden. So I love all art. I love ceramics, 20th century ceramics. We love 20th century furniture. And even mid-century furniture, early 20th and mid-century. I just buy what we love. You know, I wish I was buying Picasso years ago, but you know, you always wish you did something different. My taste has changed. I love the old masters, but I really am we're collecting things with a little more grit these days. So even though, you know, we'll have something like the Hans Memling, it's a little grittier than the art that would go on a chocolate box, like Boucher and Fragonard, which we also collect. We have a lot of Bouchers and a lot of Fragonards. But we buy what we love. We never worry about where it's going to hang, because that is never the inspiration. We never buy a picture to go on a certain wall, because it just has to be a passion. So, and we have to agree at some point, you know, there's a certain price limit. There's an enormous, bigger than life-size marble statue of Napoleon in our, those of you that have been to the house know this hideous thing. And thank God it's not at the foot of the bed, it's in the drawing room. And that was a lesson that I learned, to pay more attention, because when Stuart showed it to me, it was this big, I thought it was going to fit on his desk, until they had to reinforce the floor of the drawing room. So the purpose of our collecting, quite simply, is to, you know, have things around us that we love, that inspire us, and our offices are filled with emerging artists, because it makes our employees happy and inspires them, because we're a marketing-driven company. And someday it'll all go to a museum, if they'll take it. Primarily the LA County Museum of Art. And you see, you have all these people that heard this today. And because I understand that Hearst don't have luggage racks, so we won't be taking it with us, although it would be a nice idea if we could. And
How young were you when you started collecting?
I was 19, and I bought a Howard Chandler Christie poster for $125, and I had to pay it out over a certain amount of time. When I was about 22, I bought a Jasper Johns print, the only print that never went up in value. It's called Ruler, you know? And I put it in my office. It had a yellow ruler and a blue stripe above and a red stripe below. And I went out to lunch. When I came back, my art department, I owned an agency when I was 19, and the smartasses that worked for me put it in the Xerox machine, copied it, and they hung it. Everybody had the same picture. That was the end of me in multiples for a long time.
And just to follow up, I know you seek advice from experts.
Yes.
But you and Stuart make decisions yourself. Is it ever scary to spend that much money on a single thing and worry whether you're right in the long term, or is it all love and happiness? I
worry about a lot of things, but I don't worry about our decisions in art. And we really do our homework. You know, we work with the curators at the LA County. Scott Schaefer, who was the head of the Getty, and before that at the LA County, has been, you know, our advisor for 30 years. And we just seek advice from everyone, and everyone's happy to give you their opinion. So I think it's a good idea to work with museums.
Maurice, you collect very contemporary art, which comes with its own complications and risks. How can you predict the future? How can you know one young artist or another? It's maybe easy in hindsight to look back 4 centuries. You're working with artists who are maybe making work in the studio that you're buying for sometimes very big sums. I also know that you had a collection, what I'd call a more blue chip or classical collection of contemporary modern art, and you traded it all for very young artists. Can you tell us about that adventure of working with young artists and collecting?
Yeah. You're being too nice to say I traded. No, what happened is we collected, when I say we, with my brother, we collected in the late 80s. We started collecting late 80s, early 90s. And we were buying at the time Warhol and Basquiat and Lichtenstein and Donald Judd. I mean, all the great artists. And then in the 90s, the market collapsed. And so it took almost 10 years for the market to come back. And in between, my brother and me, you know, we took, in the business, we took a huge debt and we issued bonds. And so when the market came back, then we sold. Mm-hmm. And we sold a lot, which in retrospect, this is the worst mistake that we've ever made. And we've learned a very, very hard lesson. Because they were all great artists, and we should have never sold. We had Richter, we had everybody. But anyhow, it's done. But then we came back in the market. I started again in 2006. 2006, I started to buy again, and really to buy in depth, to be fully back, was in 2009. So it's very recent that we came back, you know, really very strongly in collecting, and in 4 or 5 years we we really have amassed a great collection of young artists. But this time, all the artists that we're collecting, they are mostly starting in the 90s, the work starting in the 90s and as of today, and with very few work from the 80s. So this is what the collection is.
And you began buying young artists, and this is definitely a don't try this at home thing, because you've bought works that fill this entire room as a single work. What were you thinking?
We can look at the slide number 4. If we can have slide number 4. This is a work from Takashi Murakami called The 100 Arats, and it's like 12 foot high. Wow. By 35 feet long. So, and this we bought basically for the foundation that we're going to have at the Masonic Temple on Wilshire. So, because obviously this doesn't fit in a house. But the thing is, we are buying from established artists, and we're buying from very young artists as well. And I love going to visit the artists in their studio and really understand, where all the inspiration is coming from, and what is it that they're expressing, in their art, and in all different of art. Like when I went to visit Sterling Ruby, he's so diversified in his art. He's doing some beautiful painting. We have one here, the number 5, in fact, number 5. Yeah, so this is one of his spray painting, and we bought that like 3 or 4 years ago, and at the time he was known, but he was not extremely well known, and today he's very well established, and his paintings, are selling for a lot more than.
So they are selling for many multiples. Do you keep collecting or do you move on to younger? Or do you like to move on to younger artists? And
we keep collecting. In fact, I was at the studio again not long ago, and yes, we do keep collecting, because what we love to do is especially when you're working with artists, contemporary artists from today, you really want to know where they are going, how they are evolving in their art, and it's great to see the great artists. You will see them really evolving, and pushing the boundaries of their art, all the time. And then you will want to collect all the different periods of their work. And so that's what we're doing.
And in fact, the scale of this art has pushed you into making your own institution. I mean, no museum could even hold what you've collected. And I know also you've become so deeply and wonderfully involved now in MoCA. How do you balance all these private collecting, private museum, public museum and then continuing to work with artists? It's
a big commitment, and I'm spending. Thank God, like 2 years ago, I retired from all my executive position at Guess, and that's how I've been able to really spend much more time, into the art world. I don't know if it's good or bad, but I'm doing it. I love it. It's a passion, and now it's I have to juggle a little bit between our private foundation and MoCA. I accepted to be the co-chair there. And for me, it's a big commitment, and I take it extremely seriously. And that's why I decided for the time being to put our own museum basically not like on a back burner, which means slowing it down a little bit and really focusing on MoCA, because MoCA really need all the help today. And I'm really spending all the time that I need to there to make sure that MoCA is good and is on a great track, and here for the decades to come, because it's an amazing institution, amazing collection. I'm sure you know the collection. Yeah. And we just have right now a show of Mike Kelly, which is unbelievable. She's gorgeous. Yeah.
I hope you can feel the passion. And what I find working with collectors is it does change your lives. I mean, I think you can feel the passion. I know
Gives
there are
another
many
dimension to your
collectors
life.
here, and you do it for that love. Larry does it. He's the working stiff. He's the guy who does it for business, and he has been doing it for a long time. I should note, Larry's also from Los Angeles, so we're very happy to have you in Los Angeles. Some people say that you have responded in such a great way to the expanding global markets. Other people say Larry has made the global markets. Your gallery, as it's expanded, as you've seen the art world now, sort of defines really something's happened very recently, which is a new globalism in contemporary art. I don't think there's ever been trade like this, or exchange, by the way, of ideas as well as pictures. Are you making that market? Are you responding to that market? What do you think about these changes? You've been in this business for a long time.
I basically do things instinctively, and I just sort of respond to the way I think the world is moving and the way it's going to affect my business. It's not like I have a plan particularly. I hate to say, I wish I did sometimes, but the truth be known, I kind of work from my gut, and even though we're in this wonderful period of technological revolution, which has been a great boon to our business, because image transfers can be spontaneous, instant. You can disseminate information electronically to collectors all over the world. At the same time, I felt that actually having a physical presence in areas that interested me, that I thought had potential for growth, where there were artists working that were of serious consequence, which I think is very important when you make a decision about expanding particularly in the gallery business. You need to always be aware of where artists are working, because that's usually where collectors and museums become the most relevant. So I really love it. I love the way the business has grown. I could have probably a great business just being in New York, and which is still clearly the art center of the world. I hate to tell you, but for the time, at least for the immediate future, I think that's probably a safe bet. But I love the adventure of working with different people. I'm truly blessed. I'm blessed to have great, talented people working in all of our galleries, from Geneva to Rome to Hong Kong. And it's very stimulating for me and challenging to program these galleries, meet collectors, work with new artists, and it's a full-time thing.
In the digital age, everybody says, oh, our art sales are going to go online like everything else. Meanwhile, you're building your physical spaces as fast as you can. And I assume that has something to do with the fact that it's not just it's a venue to show new art, not just for people to see it there, but it's a network of people, relationships, artists. It's not just the physical facility, right?
Well,
this global network.
Exactly. That was the point I was making. And by opening a gallery in Paris, by opening a gallery, a couple galleries, and we're building our third gallery in London. And then of course you have to hire really talented people who you get along with, who fit into the culture, and can relate to what we're doing and have this shared passion. I couldn't do that without those galleries and without those physical spaces to to focus people on. And I think that the gallery model, if you want to call it that, is probably going to last for the foreseeable future. I don't see the internet or for that matter, the auction houses really replacing the private art gallery. And because as much as the auction houses have tried to work with living artists, and they've done some good shows, and I mean, believe me, they're incredible competition for everybody in my world. They really can't replicate the relationships that galleries have with artists, and that's something that we really put at the top of our list of priorities.
I want to ask all three of you, for the few people now that are in the audience here who aren't art collectors, because I see so many, if one is starting to collect, it's complicated now. The markets are big, as we saw the numbers. Prices are rising. I think it can be a little intimidating or a little bit scary for younger collectors to get in it. Are they coming in too late to prices that are already too high? What advice do you give, each of you, to somebody who really loves art and wants to own it and get into that world? Larry, what would you, go ahead, Maurice.
Okay. Very simply, you have to buy what you love. You have to have like an emotional attachment, to the piece. Make your research, study the artist, study the market, study, look at if they have done solo exhibition or if they've been exhibited in a museum, even in a group show and all that. But at the end of the day, I think the main thing is to buy what you love, because you're going to live with it. Usually all the art that we buy is to hang it, to live with it, on a daily basis. And that's why you need this emotional attachment to it.
I mean, adding to that, Larry, I've seen there have been a lot of attempts to just invest in art as an investment. And it's funny because collectors who collect for love, I don't know, in my own experience, seem to do a little better financially than a lot of these investment efforts. Do you find that, or is that just that I'm not seeing them?
Well, I don't think it's just collecting for love. I think it's people who really enjoy art and really care about it tend to know more about it also. It's not just from love. If you have a passion, any passion kind of carries you forward. Without even knowing it, you're going to museums, you're going to it takes on a life of its own. And those are the people who are probably going to make the best decisions, because it comes from, again, I think it comes from their gut. And you can be advised and you can study, and at the end of the day, you've got to make decisions. And if you're not really engaged, the decision will probably feel forced, or you'll be unsure of yourself. But if you get turned on, those decisions, I think, start to feel more natural. And of course, you can make a mistake in any market, obviously, and the art market is no exception to that. And a friend of mine, a famous actor in Hollywood, once said, Larry, I got to tell you, when a painting goes up in value, I like looking at it a lot more than when it goes down. And there is a truth to that. So those things go hand in hand, though. I mean, it's hard to separate one from the other, in my opinion.
I've seen people come up to you, Linda, and ask for advice in your beautiful home with all those paintings about how do I collect, how do I start, can I ever get where you are? What do you tell them?
Well, first of all, you have to educate your eye. And you have to decide what area you want to collect in. There are a lot of undervalued areas to collect in today. That old masters, for instance, are a fraction of what contemporary art is, and we already know whether they're good or not, but it's not for everybody. Japanese art was tremendously undervalued for years. Is the Japanese market still?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting, well, we could talk about that too, the difference in markets.
Yeah, so Japanese art is amazing. Objects are amazing. Mid-century was free. You could buy it at the Rose Bowl. Now, of course, it's gone up in value. But if you educate your eye, then you actually maybe will see the trends before they happen. I've created some, areas like, when I was buying arts and crafts for our house in Aspen, it was really very inexpensive. The more I started collecting, the more it went up in value, and everybody got the same idea, and so every Western home is full of arts and crafts. And Rene Buteau, I started collecting, and then I just outclassed myself out of the market because I made him so expensive. So that can happen too. But there are really a lot of areas to collect in that are affordable.
Yeah,
get started, and getting started is the most important thing, because once you get over that fear,
Going back to Michael's, I think we got off the point a little bit. You made it. You're not, I think all of us did. You made a very good comment about collecting for investment as opposed to collecting because you love art and you want to live with it and you have a passion. And I think you're right. I think the people who collect for investments tend to make mistakes. And they don't really, I've had people come to the gallery and say, what should I buy? What's going to go up? And I just don't even want to talk. I have nothing to say. I said, I don't know. Buy what I've got here. What do you? It's like asking a waitress if you should eat in the restaurant. But I don't think the track record for art investments has been that great.
Yeah.
But the people who have bought and have had the capacity to, like the Resnicks and my friend Maurice, who have the capacity to hold the art. They hold it not just because they want it to go up in value, they hold it because they don't want to get rid of it, because they love it. At the end of the day, that is the best investment, because, lo and behold, things you bought because you loved them, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years later, my God, look, this one painting, which I bought to decorate the room, is now worth more than my whole bloody house. Right. And I've seen that happen over and over again. Right. People are shocked when they see the value, and it usually comes from a genuine connection with art and not a calculation.
Yeah, I think what's an important point, and I'm hearing that so clearly from the three of you, is that it's not that it's an arbitrary decision of taste of what you like. It happens that if you spend a lot of time exercising your taste, thinking about it, looking at it, there is a refinement of a decision-making capacity, even if it's not perfectly easy to describe, because it's true. I know collectors who buy for investment and they don't do as well because they don't, as you're saying, they don't spend as much time. I often try to say, just to disarm people, buy it because you love it and you're going to use it up and assume it'll be zero at the end, and you've gotten out of it something great, and you will have made a good decision. And you'll probably be pleasantly surprised if you can play that game. But I think it is something that is true. What Linda was talking about, I think, is also important. As I always say, history is always changing. That things keep getting.
You see, Larry doesn't sell Japanese art. That's
no,
why
but
I
it's...
thought I got off the topic.
Yeah, right. Off the topic was buying contemporary art at Gagosian Gallery. We were off the topic for a minute. We'll get back to it, Larry. That their history is always changing. Linda, who heads our acquisition committee, made a comment I will never forget. In the middle of a meeting, we were talking about historical objects and old paintings and furniture, and she said, when was it that painting got to be more expensive than furniture? And I thought, yeah, you're right. Actually, there was a time a few centuries ago, because of the craft of furniture and everything that was put in it, the furniture was more expensive and painting sort of decorated the walls. And of course, that's flipped completely.
That would have been the 18th century.
That's exactly right. And things as recently, we just recently did a Caravaggio show. So the
you
star
wouldn't start with a Caravaggio.
No, so you couldn't. Even this group couldn't afford a Caravaggio,
That's
maybe.
Right.
So major painting, John the Baptist, just classic Caravaggio, is in the collection of the Kansas City Museum, the Nelson Atkins, because the Met turned it down. Didn't seem the right. Also, it was $500,000, so they weren't sure they wanted it. Caravaggio was a footnote in art history until the 1920s, and even in 1950, the Met turns down a perfect painting, and of course now you couldn't even put a price on that painting. So, and in our encyclopedic museum, we find that you can have a top-of-the-line 18th century Japanese screen, which is what Linda's referring to, from 1774, and that will cost $2 million. One of the greatest things produced in a great cultural nation at that time, and very little versus something of the present that might be more expensive. So I think what's beautiful about this market and this interest is there's a lot to do. It's not all decided, and collectors do, I think, change those markets by their collecting, right, Larry?
Yeah.
And
that's, taste changes, and it's it's supply and demand drives all markets. So you could have extraordinary rarity, but if nobody wants it, and in the case of a younger artist, maybe doesn't turn out to have lasting value, there might be a moment when everybody wanted it.
right.
So at the end of the day, it's one of the most complicated markets to understand. So I think the best advice I would give is just get, if you really like it, you'll figure it out. It's like being able to play the piano. You can take lessons. If you don't have it in your chops, you're never going to play. And I think it's a small number of people that really kind of get art and collect it. And I think that's okay. It's not like everybody has to collect art.
Right.
That's not what it's about. I think museums serve that purpose in a much greater way. You know, they really reach out and engage the community. I think art collecting is somewhat of a quirky kind of a pastime, and it's not for everyone. And you know, if you get the bug and you really dig it, I think it adds an incredible dimension to your life. But you can't force it, you know, because it's going to pay off or it's not going to pay off. I think it has to be a genuine passion.
Just to talk about, you talked about museums, art galleries have also grown a lot. There have been a lot of new art galleries. People love to go to art galleries. We've doubled our attendance in the last 5 years. I find that we do live in a media visual culture, and visual art seems to be on the rise, generally, as a means of cultural exchange, communication, pleasure.
It's because we're illiterate. we're becoming an illiterate
So it's just
society.
the rebalancing, truth be told.
We're in an image culture, and that's the good news and the bad news. So.
Yeah, but Larry, that's the way art started, illuminated manuscripts and so forth,
Right.
for you know, a
picture
public
books,
that couldn't read the Bible. So the Bible stories were told on panels and so
We
forth.
just don't want to make a full circle that way.
I think we are though, darling.
Go back to the caves, right?
No, but there is much more awareness now about the art than there was like even 10 years ago. You know, in the larger community, you know,
Yeah.
people are much more interested, much more versed into the art. At least this is the way I see it. You know, I see a lot more young people very interested in the art, which is great. You know, to see that. And you see them in the galleries, you see them in all kind of, when there's a big art fair and all that. And it's great to see, you know, this interest, you know, this passion, you know, from the young generations. But going back to what you were saying just before, you know, about, you know, collecting for investment or not investment, you know. I was showing before the Sterling Ruby. At the same time as I bought that piece, I bought other piece from other work from other artists, you know, and almost at the same price range as what I bought here, and they didn't go anywhere. I mean, you know, they're more stable and all that. Okay, does it mean that I like it less? No, you know, I like the work. I like the work. You know, but there are quite a few of the artists that we have bought in the last 5 years have really, you know, gone extremely high into recognition and into value and all that, and some others, you know, have been slower, and that's okay. The question you have to ask yourself at that time is, are these good artists, solid artists, you know, are they evolving, you know, in their work? Are they evolving in their art or not, you know? And do you want to keep, you know, do you want to keep the work in your collection or not?
Right.
So that's basically, you know.
But you said that you don't like it less, but I do know that, you know, you buy things and you make mistakes, right? That the only way to learn what you really love, forgetting the prices, is to buy, make mistakes.
Yeah.
Some will be good, some will be bad. It's how you refine your skills.
And I did,
right?
I did some just like 2 years ago, something like that. I bought pieces, you know, I bought work of art, you know, from what comes to my mind, you know, 2 artists. I'm not going to say the names, of course, but you know,
go down.
but no, and they're good. They're good artists, but I lost the emotional,
right.
You know, the emotion, you know, about it, and I don't see it fitting in the collection as much as, you know, when I bought it, because the collection has evolved in a way, you know. So these now I'm going, you know, I decided that I'm going to sell, so I will sell. So there will be some time. There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm interested to bring it back to economics, Larry. You know, Linda was talking about collecting these things of great rarity. You know, there aren't going to be more Rembrandts made that I know of, but every once in a while they do come up. new ones. But that's the limited side of art, what's been made. But it seems to me supply is very much on the rise, that it is now a business for artists to go into to make money. When I went to art school, we never thought we'd be an artist to make money. That wasn't one of the options. You did it because you couldn't do anything else. Now I think a lot of art students are entering that. It does seem to me that supply is growing to an extent that it does become complicated, that there's so much of it. How do you sift through it? Do you think there could be a bubble in the future of this very young artist?
Because of oversupply? Or
yeah, because of this oversupply.
Well,
even in the
I'm
future.
sure there'll be a bubble in the future. I mean, that's inevitable. You just never see it coming usually. That's the nature of a bubble, is it's hard to see until it's too late. But yeah, I mean, some artists just, I think generally because of the way they work or their energy or their studio method, naturally produce a lot of art. I really don't know that many. There are a few exceptions, and maybe it's better not to pick on any particular artist, that where you got the feeling that they really just produced because they wanted to, they thought they were printing money, so to speak. Right. And I think that has its own consequences. But there are other artists who just naturally, Basquiat, I mean, he could bang out 3-4 paintings a day. Were they lousy because he painted them quickly? No. Warhol, huge output. Picasso. Huge output. Mm-hmm. So it's too simple to say that supply is, I mean, it would be too cynical to say that that's a market thing. I think in most cases, certainly in the case of Picasso, and I think Warhol as well, that was just the way the studio worked. That was just the way their imagination worked. And if the result was that they made a lot of money, that wasn't a bad thing.
Right.
But at the time, you know, talking about Warhol, at the time, he was criticized by everybody.
Right.
You know, at the to the point that they called him the painting factory.
Right.
That was
Which
a painting
he intended
factory.
and wanted to do.
Yeah,
that.
because he was producing a lot. But look, you know, now we're the Warhol.
Right.
You know,
He got the last
and he's
laugh.
done a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He got the last laugh.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
His net worth, the worth of all Warhols is probably more than most countries. The asset value of the Warhol body of work as a whole. Who knows what it is? It's incalculable. But it's also worth saying that, and this is about history changing, we have this romantic 19th century, early 20th century idea that all artists work in a garret and out of, you know, some kind of crazy insanity. When, if I look at LACMA, half the things produced at LACMA were produced for commercial purposes. A lot of movies will be art. You know, there's not a direct correlation in that, I think. So it is different. I know we have about 15 minutes, and I'm wondering if in this very erudite and smart group there are some questions for this fantastic panel. And I think we're supposed to ask for a microphone. So is there a microphone somewhere around for, yes, here it's coming right towards you, right in front of the column there. Just take the mic.
Thank you. Thank you for all your thoughts. I'd also love to hear you address some of the online auction companies that have popped up recently in online sales. Is that helping to add liquidity to the art market? Is that being disruptive to some of your efforts in collecting or building a gallery business, and where do you think it'll go?
I read that the online, I just read this somewhere, I think it was in the New York Times a couple of days ago, that the online art market doubled in the last year, but from a pretty low level. I mean, the numbers are still pretty weak, but it doubled. So I think the trend is that will be a bigger part of the market. I don't think it hurts my business. I think it's, at this point, kind of a neutral thing. I don't think it's gotten the scale yet that's really that impactful, but clearly it's going to be here to stay, and it's hard to say how far it'll go, but I think it just kind of broadens art awareness. I think it's probably at the end of the day, it's sort of a positive. It just brings art to more people. If they can buy something online, it's generally going to be a pretty low price point, because you're not going to want to buy a very expensive thing without seeing it and maybe even living with it for a couple of days and being able to take it home. So I think the price point's going to be, for the foreseeable future, quite low. But for people who don't have access to galleries or more conventional exposure to art and parts of the world where the internet works fine, I think it's going to be a meaningful thing.
We have a question over here.
Hi, so coming from the world of finance, I'd be interested to hear the view of the collectors of how does the price momentum get started? I have acquaintances who are artists, and they echoed what you said as collectors, that your experience of driving the price up of something that you become interested in. But how does that mechanism work? How do you communicate? How do you see it happening, other than your just individual activity in the marketplace? Does the gallery play a role? How does that milieu occur?
It happens quite a bit, and at different stage. For young artists, for living artists and all that, and I can tell you about like 2 different artists, okay, which recently their market has multiplied, but almost instantly. Can I say some name or not? Yeah, of artists, yeah, yeah. So one of them is Christopher Wall. Christopher Wall, is a great artist, and he was already very well established and very well, at a high price already. But he broke a record at the last auction. One of his paintings sold for like $26 million, I think. And now, sure enough, there is another painting coming of him, one of the world painting, and the estimate is now it's normal, it's 28 million. When the other one, the one which sold at 26 was, the estimate was probably 5 to 7, okay? And it sold at 26. So that's at the high end. And then for young artists, there is the one who comes to my mind, just quickly. Can we have the slide? Just a sec. Slide number 16, please. Slide number 16 is Toba Auerbach. She's a young artist, a young woman, very, very talented. And this series is called The Fold. And she has an amazing technique. She's an amazing artist, but very young. And she was not very, not very well known by the big public and all that. And all of a sudden, and I must say, it started with at the auction. At the auction, suddenly one of her paintings sold for $600,000, which was a record by very, very far. And now there's one coming into auction. Now the estimate is 800 to $1.2 million. Mm-hmm. So, and it happens like that. And in this particular series, the only thing that I can say is because she announced that she was done with this series. She's not going to make any more of these folds. She got famous for this by the art community. But now she announced that, she explored this series. She explored it to the extent that, she had nothing to bring anymore. So she decided to stop it. She might do it later again. We don't know. But for the time being, she announced that she's not going to do it. So all of a sudden, all the paintings, of this series have exploded.
I want to ask in the interim, no, go ahead. Go ahead, I'll hope. Please.
I was going to ask for you to speak about, no matter how wealthy a museum is, museums are collections of collections, and so maybe speak about the importance of patronage or the joys of being a patron, since it's very important both to your survival, and I think it might be something.
Are you talking to Michael or me?
Well, both.
We're a team on
We are a team.
Yeah. We're all of us. But
his need for patrons and your joy of being patrons.
of course, we're a public institution, and this is something that I think not everyone does recognize. The great museums that you know are mostly collections of private collections. It's really true that there are examples of museums that collect well on their own, but the biggest collections, the most important ones, are private collections. And so I do see museums very much as you say, as most of them are collections of collections, whether it was Mellon's collection, Rockefeller's collection. the museums in Dubai are really private collections gifted to public collections. And I think there's something about that kind of split-second decision-making intuition that private collectors have that serves them well, whereas sometimes museums are a little bit plodding and making those decisions. Not that we don't have a lot of history behind them. And then the joy and the miracle is that a lot of people think that when they're done with the art or as they're buying it, that it's just as fun to see millions of other people enjoying it as themselves. And it's like a miracle how it works, that we fill these beautiful museums for the public, for millions and millions of people out of that, I think out of that spirit, which Linda, I think you've thought about for a long time.
Yes, I mean, I think as it relates to our collection, that we're just borrowing the art for our lifetime, and that it really belongs to the people, and it has to go back there. And it is a comfort to me to know that our collection will go to LACMA because of the stewardship that LACMA will offer. We have no fantasies about having a little, well, I may have a fantasy about having a little frick on Sunset, but the more I think about it, if we keep buying the street, then it'll have to happen. But, you know, the counsel that you get with a museum, the support you get, the education you get is invaluable. I love art. I love all moments in art. You know, we don't collect expensive contemporary art. I could say Stuart doesn't understand it, but I don't think I do either. You know, it's just we buy less expensive emerging artists to, you know, to put on the walls of our offices. But when it comes to old masters in modern pictures, you know, you need great counsel, and when it's time to give it away, if you can afford to, and hopefully we'll be able to, you know, and not have to support our children and, you know, sell the art. They have enough money. Then you want to know that the stewardship that the museum offers and the ambiance of the other collections will make it more appealing. Yeah. But what you try not to do is to have strings attached, because there are so many strings. I have an old friend who's passed away who had a fabulous collection of silver, and he wanted to take over like 25 rooms at the LA County, and sadly we couldn't, you know, do that at the time. So he gave it to a museum in another country who promised him all sorts of things, and then no one went to see it. So it's better, I feel, to let the curators make the decisions of what will hang and what will go into storage and what they'll deaccession, quite frankly. So.
It's worth saying, too, so I'll just add one little note to that, is that in whatever, if you live here or in any other city, MoCA, LACMA, all these museums, they're chock full of PhDs and masters in art history and smart people, and they want nothing more than to give you their thoughts and advice and the value of all that. So I do recommend, you know, get involved in a museum, give a little something, and you get this wonderful amount of thought and advice. They'll send you to galleries, hopefully Larry's, and you know, it goes on and on. It's a great experience. Yes.
Michael, hi. Ann Radice. I am the director of a small museum in New York City, the American Folk Art Museum. But one of the things that has helped us is to develop a young collectors, and I'm sure you have this, Michael, in spades, but we were astonished at how many young people, a lot of them from Wall Street, who were afraid to even deal with art. And so we've started a group called Young Folk, and we are amazed, and bringing them to collectors and things like that, and explaining that you don't have to spend $1 million for your first work of art. But I heartily endorse that for some of our financial people out here to get their kids into it early, I'd say.
Yeah, there are a lot of people. We did a fun thing when we were developing our decorative arts collection in mid-century California design, which, by the way, wasn't even a category that museums were interested in until the museum did a show. Nobody wanted the show anywhere in the world. Now it's traveling globally to 7 venues, and prices have gone up. But there were things we were buying on eBay, which is kind of an interesting idea, that you can buy things on eBay that a museum wants because they have cultural value that's not quite yet sorted out. And so it does mean, in some way, that a certain amount of collecting is accessible to anyone if they're thinking about it. Mark. collector
Following up
himself,
on
Mark
that,
Nathanson.
A great
question.
collector.
And Maurice mentioned this a minute ago about young people coming in. On a personal level, on each of you, how did you start collecting, and what were your influences from your home? Were you, when you started, as a dealer or as a collector or as a museum director, were your parents, were your family interested in art? Was that important to you, or did you just fall into it?
For my part, I can tell you, my parents were not at all into art. My father was a rabbi, so we didn't have art in the house. It came just by love, and the first thing that I ever bought was not at all contemporary art. It was in late 70s, early 80s, and I was buying some post-impressionist because I could not afford the impressionist, so I was buying the post-impressionist. And then a friend of mine from Paris, who was an auctioneer and a great contemporary art expert, and he's the one who educated me about contemporary. One of the first things I saw was some paintings from Yves Klein, monochrome, the blue, and I didn't understand it, and so he started to explain to me and all that, and then you develop an eye, for contemporary art, and that's how I got into art.
My family didn't similar background, and no rabbi, but we didn't we didn't have a collecting a bone in our body as a family. But I grew up in a family that was kind of into music and acting and on a certain level, and so I kind of had I think I was sort of had a predisposition towards the arts and towards literature, and then I started looking at art books, and I found that I was absolutely riveted by images in art books, which had nothing to do with becoming an art dealer, as it turned out, but it may have laid some kind of an aesthetic foundation, because I became very attuned to things that were visual. And my business started in a very lowly fashion. I started selling posters on the sidewalk in Westwood, which had nothing to do with becoming an art dealer, to be honest with you. It was just a way to make more money than I could parking cars. and then gradually I'd sell more expensive posters, and then I started, wow, this is kind of neat. I'm making some money. And reading art magazines, and it just kind of snowballed. But I think the foundation for it was many years earlier, when, for whatever reason, images of art, not on a computer screen, not in a museum or an art gallery, but in books that I had access to, just completely engrossed me. And I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know why I was so captured by it, and only later in my life did it kind of come together. Mm-hmm.
My father started taking me to the Philadelphia Art Museum when I couldn't even, before I could walk. He used to carry me through the halls, and that's an old master collection, the Johnson collection, the Roger van der Weydens and so forth, the Van Eycks. Those are the pictures that I grew up with. They were my rock stars. And so I think that's why I have this feeling for old masters, because of those early years. And my grandparents were, my grandfather was a huge collector, but not of paintings, but of objects and furniture. And my parents collected antiques and a lot of Chinese loan stuff and that sort of thing, hard-paste porcelain. So collecting is in my DNA. Mm-hmm. I also studied as an artist. I had my own studio in high school. It's kind of crazy. I went to a progressive high school in Philadelphia. I was not a very good artist, but it laid the foundation for me to understand the brushwork and the work and the thought and the passion that goes into creating a work of art. So
that makes sense. I don't know. My parents were political scientists, but they took me to the museums. I hated the museums, but I liked the art. And then I decided I'd go away from politics into art, become an artist, and then you're an artist and you realize you need a day job. So then I came back to ending up trying to work in museums. But it's a big world out there. It's a global world. art. It's a huge network of people. A lot of you here are in it, and I think we'd all recommend indulging in the pleasures, if not the business, of art, which you can do very easily in galleries, museums, and private collections that are everywhere here.
And going back, to how especially the young people who want to start collecting and all that, or to just start collecting. There are a lot of small galleries which are like, if you can call them incubator, basically. Who work with young emerging artists and really help them express themselves, and support them and all that. And then after that, these artists, as they evolve in their art, then they go into other gallery until one day they end up with Larry. Hopefully. The best of them end up with Larry. And but that's how it works.
One more question, I think, because we're about to wrap up so quickly.
You've mentioned young people several times now. I'm curious about your thoughts on the role of the arts schools, the great art schools in the country or worldwide, and arts education in general. I mean, wouldn't an appreciation for that
That's
come
a whole
from
other
that?
session.
Yeah, that is actually a double session. There are great art schools, higher education, for example, in this place we live, Los Angeles, that have produced artists that show in your gallery and other places. But we know it's an utter tragedy that for some bizarre reason our national school system has decided it's not that relevant, when every study ever made about this topic shows that the arts and creative work in schools increases attention, attendance, goals, and learning in every way. And we often among ourselves talk about us in Los Angeles as this is, by the way, if you can paint, sculpt, photograph, sing, do anything right, you can get a job in Los Angeles.
It's a level
job
playing
training.
field.
That's right. So
It really is. And PS Arts, if I could just do a little, commercial for PS Arts, it's a great organization. We put PS Arts in 5 school districts in the Central Valley. And the results from having art classes in the curriculum have really raised the entire standard of the school and their test scores. So in all areas.
Yeah, I think I would recommend that we make that another session and another topic, and one that we can become activists in, because I think there's a lot of value to our society if we can push that along. I want to thank our fantastic panelists for their intelligence, wisdom, and all of you for being here, and thanks very much.